They say the truth will set you free, but in the world of UFO knowledge and the deepest pockets of the military-industrial complex, the truth might get you killed.
Anyone been murdered that you would think that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
This, of course, being David Grusch, famed high-ranking intelligence officer turned UFO whistleblower, speaking under oath to Congress. And he's not alone in making that claim.
Said you need to take those two names off your list and never talk about those two people ever again. If you and he said they would have no problem having you killed.
This comment coming from current Congressman Eric Burleson, who is blatantly stating if he looks into certain people relating to UFOs, they'll have him killed. If a current congressman isn't safe with this knowledge, who is? Tonight we're looking at a pattern. 1 death is a tragedy. 2, a coincidence. When you zoom out, you see a trail of questionable deaths intersecting with knowledge on the UFO topic. In part 1 of this 2-part series, you're going to see some names you may know and some you may not. Because this is a video that talks about heavy things, viewer discretion is advised. I'm not saying every death on this list is a hit. I am saying that if you're holding the keys to the biggest secret in human history, watch out.
James Forrestal, Center, newly appointed Secretary of the U.S. Navy, confers with his assistants. Forrestal, as Undersecretary, played a major role in creating the largest Navy in the world. Now he is given its leadership.
We begin by going all the way back to 1949. We're looking at the first Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal. Forrestal was Secretary of Defense during the rumored 1947 Roswell incident.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Forrestal was also allegedly a founding member of the Majestic 12. For those unaware, MJ-12 was supposedly a shadow group of 12 men who were the only ones who had access to the UFO phenomenon. The group's creation was supposedly September 24, 1947, just a few months after the Roswell crash. The MJ-12 documents are highly debated. However, the oddities surrounding Forrestal's death can't be ignored. In 1949, Forrestal apparently began acting, quote, erratically.
Retiring Secretary of Defense James V. Forrestal and his newly appointed successor Louis A. Johnson drop in at the White House. Wartime Secretary of Navy and first American to assume the title of Defense Secretary, Forrestal gets warm thanks from the President.
He was forcibly admitted to the 16th floor of Bethesda Naval Hospital in Maryland. His brother Henry repeatedly tried to visit James in the hospital, but was denied access. Henry was at the hospital May 22, 1949. He was denied access that day. Later that same day, his body was found on a 3rd floor canopy. Seemingly he had jumped out the window from the 16th floor. A bathrobe cord was tied tightly around his neck. The official story was suicide by jumping. The deep investigative report, known as the Wilcuts Report, was conducted on July 13, 1949. One problem: it remained classified and secret for 55 years and wasn't discovered until a Freedom of Information Act request, April 2004. Some of the oddities surrounding Forrestal's death from this report include glass on his bed, not near the window, signs of a struggle potentially. Forrestal's fully intact bathrobe sash was wrapped around his neck. The sash wasn't broken, so he must have tied the sash around his neck and then jumped out the window without trying to hang himself. The strangest oddity about this case was Forrestal's suicide note was actually a poem from Sophocles, and it ended mid-word. He just stopped writing it mid-word and jumped. The biggest issue of it all? The Wilcuts Report states that the handwriting was not Forrestal's handwriting. Another thing we can't overlook, the MJ-12 connections at Bethesda Naval Hospital. Reported MJ-12 member Roscoe Hillencoder, the sitting director of Central Intelligence, was in charge of security at Bethesda and had total access authority over the hospital, according to the Wilcuts Report. Remember, Forrestal's own brother was blocked from seeing him multiple times. According to the legendary Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist who investigated UFOs, Dr. Vannevar Bush, another reported MJ-12 member, was seen around the hospital in the days leading up to Forrestal's death. Sidney Sewers, director of Central Intelligence, also a member of MJ-12, would visit Forrestal during his stay. Finally, General Walter Smith, who reportedly would replace Forrestal in the MJ-12 according to documents, visited Forrestal 9 days before he died. Was Forrestal locked up, isolated, and even potentially killed because he wanted to reveal information about non-human intelligence? While Forrestal's own brother and even his priest were being turned away at the door, the men reportedly running the UFO cover-up had unrestricted access and even control over who got to go in his room. Let's move on to Morris K. Jessup, a name you might have heard less about, but is nevertheless very interesting. Jessup was a highly respected astronomer with a master's degree from the University of Michigan. In 1955, Jessup published The Case for the UFO. He argued that UFOs used gravity manipulation, not rockets.
This subject takes hold of you and practically become a slave to it. It's a little hard to explain, but once you get into it, you recognize the length and the breadth and the depth of it to a point where it is not only amazing, but perhaps appalling as well.
Here's where it gets a bit odd. Jessup began receiving multiple letters from a man identifying himself as Carlos Miguel Allende, also known as Carl Allen. Letters discussed theories that were written in Jessup's book, but also talked about different things like non-human intelligent beings, gravity manipulation. Allende even claimed to have witnessed the infamous Philadelphia experiment. In 1943, the USS Eldridge apparently became invisible and teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia, using Einstein's unified field theory. I know it sounds a bit wild, bear with me here. All of a sudden, Jessup was contacted by the Office of Naval Research, or ONR. An anonymous copy of the book that Jessup had written had been mailed to the chief of the Office of Naval Research, Admiral N. Firth. This copy was filled in with notes and a writing style that matched Allende's. Strangely, the ONR invited Jessup to Washington, who then confirmed that the handwriting matched Allende's. Instead of throwing the book away, the Office of Naval Research contracted the Varo Manufacturing Company, a defense contractor in Garland, Texas, to produce a limited run of the annotated copy of the book. For whatever reason, approximately 100 or so of these books were produced. They were then distributed among top-level military and intelligence officials, which would become known as the Varo edition. I'll put a link in the description below for you to check out the Varo edition. It's a bit rambly for me. However, one thing I did take note of and enjoy was Allende stated that 2 different types of non-human intelligent beings were living here, and this had been going on for millennia. Where were they staying here, you asked? In bases undersea, which I'm hearing a lot more of day by day.
What if these are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that who knows how long, and that we think they're coming in from way out. Maybe they did millennia ago, but they're here and they're in these deep water areas, and that's why. I mean, like we say, we know more about the face of the moon than we do what's going on there. Now, we have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas. And so, to me, it just it creates a question there. And then when we have naval personnel telling me that we have these sightings and that there's these underwater craft they're chasing that are doing hundreds of miles an hour, and the best we've got is something that does maybe just a little under 40 miles an hour. So I got a lot of questions about that.
If this is all the ravings of a madman, why did the ONR hire a defense contractor to reprint the book? On April 20th, 1959, Jessup was found in his Chevy station wagon at Matheson Hammock Park in Miami, Florida, dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. A hose was reportedly attached from the exhaust pipe and fed through his rear window. Multiple strange things surround this death. The body was found, but no autopsy was performed. Jessup reportedly told his best friend, Dr. Manson Valentine, The night before he died, he had made a breakthrough regarding the unified field theory and the physics of the disks. He just so happened to be carrying a manuscript to a dinner meeting with a Navy official. That manuscript was never found in his car or at his home.
Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.
Now, I'm going to start by saying I'm not claiming JFK was assassinated solely because of UFOs. However, there is a paper trail of debated documents that might connect his assassination to UFOs. The first one, again highly debated, discusses the fact that JFK talked about the phenomenon with Marilyn Monroe. This memo, of course, would be part of one of the MJ-12 document file dumps. What I'm really interested in, though, is National Security Action Memo 271. This executive memorandum was designed so that the US and Soviets could work together on, quote, outer space matters. Supposedly on the exact same day as this public declaration, Kennedy also sent a private top-secret memorandum to the director of the CIA, John McCone. As we can see here, Kennedy wanted to distinguish between knowns of US or Soviet tech and unknowns to prevent a nuclear incident. It seems he planned to share this knowledge with the Soviet Union as part of a joint space exploration initiative. We have yet another fascinating document that was another part of the MJ-12 document dump. It's famously known as the Burned Memo. It discusses, quote, Lancer, which was JFK's codename, and it mentions that if JFK continues to push for UFO files to be shared with the Soviets, the situation could get, quote, wet, which means he should be killed. It's important to note that JFK signed the NSAM 271 10 days before his assassination. He requested files on UFOs be declassified the same day. I've covered JFK's overall connections with UFOs deeper here in my Presidents and UFOs playlist. Definitely check it out. While the next name on this list isn't as well known as JFK, his death is also very mysterious. He was one of the first mainstream voices to claim the Air Force was lying about Roswell and Project. His 1966 book, Flying Saucers: Serious Business, was a massive bestseller that exposed Project Grudge, which was a real and secret program studying UFOs and the systematic silencing of witnesses. Reportedly, Edwards had started telling his friends he was being followed and that his mail was being intercepted. On June 24, 1967, a conference called the Congress of Scientific Ufologists was being held in New York. A letter was read with a prediction that stated that Frank Edwards would not survive the conference. Strangely, it was eventually determined that Edwards had actually passed away, just a few minutes before midnight on the night of the 23rd, just hours before this UFO conference. The cause was a heart attack. Now, whether this was an odd, quote, prediction, or if news had just spread really rapidly for the 60s, it's hard to tell at this point. As for the heart attack, I do want to mention the CIA was caught red-handed with something called a heart attack gun, or an SAC-46. Seen here, held by Senator Frank Church in a public congressional hearing, it was an undetectable poison dart gun that would give victims a heart attack. Obviously, heart attacks happen naturally, but Edwards is on this list because he was looking into the UFO phenomenon and the strange, quote, prediction, which admittedly could have warped from just simply announcing his death into the, quote, prediction that it's become since. I do want to mention another name that had suspiciously died from a heart attack extremely young at the age of 37 in 1960, that being Captain Edward Ruppelt. He was formerly the head of Project Blue Book. He started out skeptical, but slowly seemed to shift towards a little bit more convinced that UFOs were real. Ruppelt's book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, is a fascinating read, and you can find it for free online. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Again, I stress, I know heart attacks happen naturally, but in the UFO subject, and he had one at 37, right as he was going from skeptic to maybe potential believer in the position of investigating UFOs for the government. For For the last member for part 1 of this series, we have one of my personal favorite UFO researchers, James McDonald.
After a year-and-a-half study of the problem, when you go to the witnesses in many of these cases, when you sort through, there are so many examples of highly credible witnesses, completely stable people of excellent reputation when you check around a bit, who have seen utterly unconventional objects maneuvering at low or sometimes high altitude, that to regard this as anything but a problem of considerable scientific importance, I think will be to miss something that we've already missed far too long, 20 years.
Dr. James McDonald was a senior physicist at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics and a professor of meteorology at the University of Arizona. If anyone was qualified enough to debunk the Air Force's UFO explanations, such as temperature inversions, weather balloons, or even swamp gas, it was McDonald. He was the David Grusch of his time. In 1968, during congressional hearings, he testified before the House Committee on Science and Astronautics. He presented a huge body of evidence and stated that the UFO problem was something of, quote, extraordinary scientific importance, end quote. In 1969, the government-funded Condon Committee released its report stating that UFOs weren't worth studying based on data they had examined. McDonald performed a scorched earth peer review. He exposed the committee's director, Edward Condon, had been decided on the negative conclusion before the study even began. He's my kind of guy, like I said.
A very strange situation here for 20 years plus. Essentially similar phenomena have been reported all over the world, large numbers in the U.S., officialdom ignoring them, Air Forces ignoring them, and yet apparently a steady increase in the numbers of reliable reports from people in all walks of life seeing these objects that are not products of our technology, that are not meteorological astronomical phenomena, hovering at low altitude, increasing numbers in urban areas, and collectively we don't know what's going on. That's an extremely unwise situation, no matter how you view it.
Just before his death, McDonald was reportedly lobbying the United Nations to form an international body to study the phenomenon, effectively trying to take the secret out of the hands of the US military. In April 1971, McDonald allegedly shot himself in the head but survived, though he was left partially blinded. Apparently, a group of his colleagues, including notable researcher Jerome Clark, stated that McDonald was not suicidal and stated that McDonald was on the verge of forcing new congressional hearing. Nevertheless, June 13, 1971, McDonald's body was found under a bridge in a desert in Tucson, Arizona. A pistol was also laying next to him. When we zoom out and look at the big picture, we do see intersections. Digging into the UFO world and breaking new ground somehow led to odd and sudden deaths. However, this is not just a problem that plagued the 40s through the 70s.
And the black budget is dead wrong. It sidesteps the United States Congress and its Constitution of its people and says you're a bunch of morons you don't need to know.
In part 2 of this series, I'm going to cover more modern cases. And believe me, there are numerous explosive, questionable deaths that will be covered during this time for UFO-related researchers. Comment your thoughts down below. Is there somebody important I missed? What do you all think? Again, is there any cases you want me to cover in the near future? I really appreciate everyone watching my videos, liking, commenting. You guys make it all worth it. Stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.